Hey, everybody. It is Thursday, January 9th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Mununu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to, in this case, watching all the news, Jill, as we record this podcast, monitoring the headlines. Just behind me, Anderson Cooper of CNN in basically the hellscape, the LA area right now. He's in the Altadena area reporting on things. We've been trying to monitor all the coverage, Jill, as these, I should say, multiple fires have escalated and spread in California.
Yeah, one of the eeriest things that he said as I was watching some of his reporting is that it's pitch black because the smoke is so thick. So even though the sun is technically out and it was daytime, it looks like it's midnight there.
Yeah, really eerie in California. Caught our attention. We'll get into it a bit in the podcast. That they say everyone who lives in LA County, the millions and millions of people who live in LA County, all under threat here, given the wind gusts, given the nature of the fire, given they can't get it under control. In many cases, Jill, the wind gusts were 60, 70, 80, 90 miles per hour. They couldn't get up with planes and helicopters to drop water because of the winds. And so the firefighters left to just try to preserve the fire stations in some cases as these embers are flying miles there. So we've heard from a number of you in the Mo News community in the LA area. We hope you have gotten out. We hope you're staying safe. But just it's going to be... you can already see it. One of the most expensive disasters in American history, if not the most expensive disaster, and years, if not longer, to rebuild some of those areas.
All right, and with that, let's get to the headlines here. As we were just talking about apocalyptic scenes from Los Angeles with the most destructive fire in the county's history. Attorney General Merrick Garland plans to release Jack Smith's January 6th report, despite objections from President-elect Trump.
Yeah, we'll get into the latest legal maneuvering here.
Overseas are changes to Syrian textbooks, a sign of a more extreme regime to come.
They just took over a country a couple of weeks ago, already working on a variety of things over there.
Back here at home in business news, a merger in the retail industry and Florida's signature crop, oranges, in crisis. In tech news, Apple says it will be updating its AI feature after inaccurate news alerts.
Bizarre news alerts. AI still in a very nascent stage there when it comes to news.
But Moshe, these days, the news is so insane that you could have gotten one of these alerts and been like, oh my God, what now?
Yeah, like we'll go through them and you guys can gauge whether you would have believed it if you saw it coming from Apple.
That's what we should actually do for the quiz this week. Real headline or fake Apple AI headline. And we'll also break down some of the most innovative new products from CES 2025, from rollable laptops to solar cars. And Moshe, something I know will be of interest to you, some cool changes to the Delta app.
You know I heart Delta, Jill, even though they're not a sponsor of this podcast.
And Moshe is on this day in history.
Jill, you could argue that on this day in history, potentially the most influential invention of the 21st century was rolled out. That's your clue. Lots
of places we could go with that one. I will wait until the end like everybody else.
Or you could just guess for a few minutes. I kid. We should get to the news.
Okay, let's start with the fires in Los Angeles. An apocalyptic scene. The fires, driven by ferocious winds, have killed at least 5 people and left a number of others with significant injuries. As of this recording on Wednesday night, 6 different fires are burning, and they are 0% contained. About 30,000 acres have been burned, including thousands of structures. We are talking homes, businesses, restaurants, historic buildings, entire streets gone. Late Wednesday night, the newest fire started in the Hollywood Hills next to Runyon Canyon, leading to new evacuations.
Jill, that started just around 6 p.m. local time Wednesday night. The latest fire they have to contend with, while they already have these 2 major ones out in Pasadena to the east of LA, and then you have the major one in the Palisades we'll tell you more about to the west, on the western side of LA on the coastline. And now you got the Hollywood Hills fire. Jill, iconic. We're talking about the Hollywood sign, Runyon Canyon, very populated area that they are dealing with as we record this on Wednesday night.
Officials have ordered nearly 100,000 people to evacuate across Los Angeles as they have dealt with wind gusts of up to 100 miles per hour. So that is effectively a fire hurricane, a combination of factors that are making the task effectively impossible for firefighters. The Palisades fire, which is burning in the seaside area between Malibu and Santa Monica along the iconic LA coast, is already the most destructive in LA County's history, and it continues to grow. Many celebrities have either had their homes destroyed or have been forced to evacuate. People like Adam Brody from Nobody Wants This, Jamie Lee Curtis, Mandy Moore, Adam Sandler, Ben Affleck, Tom Hanks, and Steven Spielberg all have homes in the area. And then there are, of course, tens of thousands of other residents, not celebrities, but people who have lived in these communities for years, some for several generations, who have lost their homes and businesses. The fire has already destroyed thousands of structures. The Palisades fire is to the west of Los Angeles, destroying more than 16,000 acres. And then there is the Eaton fire, burning in Altadena and Pasadena, east of Los Angeles, that has burned more than 10,000 acres and is threatening about 13,000 buildings. Reporters, in some cases, are reporting on the destruction of their own homes. Back at the Palisades fire, here's a bit of one report from reporter Jonathan Vigliotti of CBS News as he takes in the utter destruction in the downtown of the Pacific Palisades.
We just arrived here in what is left of downtown Pacific Palisades, and I am overwhelmed by the scale of loss. And I'm not alone. I've been looking at the faces of firefighters here. They look like they're attending a wake, and there is so much destruction. Aside from the mall, which is still standing, most of the businesses here have been destroyed. The homes down in the neighborhoods here completely gone. I spoke with one person. He estimates thousands of homes destroyed. That aligns with what we've been seeing. You can see and hear the wind here in the trees, the howling sound, easily 100 miles per hour gusts at times. That's what fueled this fire. The fire is still burning. You've got fire crews throughout the area trying to put out flames as this wind continues. Thousands of people under a mandatory evacuation. Many people are going to return to homes that were lost, and even more important, their community completely gone.
Those emergency workers he's talking about are already stretched thin. Simply put, the county's fire chief says there are just not enough county personnel to handle the fires. At a press conference on Wednesday, he thanked the firefighters from the northern part of California and other states like Nevada and Oregon for heading to the area to help. Also, at points, the fire hydrants in the Pacific Palisades neighborhood went dry. And Moshe, with that comes the political blame game.
Yeah, Jill, it wasn't just the Palisades. You also had water issues at the other fire, the Eaton fire out in Pasadena. Water storage tanks in the Palisades area went dry multiple times. The issue, they're using so much they cannot resupply. So it's not a lack of water, but a lack of resupply ability at the pace water is being used by effectively every firefighter in the LA area. Plus a number of people have left their hoses on trying to save their homes. Nonetheless, it brings up an infrastructure issue in terms of how much water can pump through the grid. At the same time, there's various water pipes that are destroyed and power stations that aren't getting power and pumping stations that aren't getting power. A whole combo of factors. Already the blame game has begun and the fires are still expanding here. One of the main issues they have is that typically when they fight fires, they can do it by air, right? They can drop water from the air. But with these winds, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 miles per hour gusts with these Santa Ana winds, these record winds, they have to ground a number of planes. So they haven't had the air support that they typically rely on. They're trying to fight it on the ground. And then everyone is tapped into the water grid here. I imagine there'll be a lot of postmortems. There's already a lot of blame to go around. You already saw a member of the LA City Council, Tracy Park, who represents the Palisades, saying there's a chronic underinvestment in LA when it comes to infrastructure, and that is part of her concern. So ultimately here, we'll hear more about all of that. In the meantime, one of the major issues here, these flying fire embers. With 100 mile per hour gusts, 90 mile per hour winds, 60 mile per hour winds, I mean, like you look on the wind map and it's just remarkable what you're seeing in the LA area. The little fire embers are going miles in some cases. So these little fire embers, like snowflakes, like fire snowflakes, landing in new areas, expanding that fire. the firefighters trying to, attempt to limit the embers here, but they face an impossible task. The images are just devastating. Entire neighborhoods. We're hearing from a number of you in the Moose community who have lost your homes. Just terrible stories. Jill, I mean, literally, you're looking at these streets and you see the dry cleaner is gone, the bank is gone, the grocery stores are gone, the clothing shops are gone, the dentist's office are gone. Just entire neighborhoods and communities have gone up in flames in a matter of just over 24 hours here. Governor Gavin Newsom has been on the scene there in California. He said that more than 1,400 firefighters, emergency personnel, first responders have been deployed, including members of the state's National Guard. Remember, you have fire risk across the entire state. So the concern is more of these things could light up. That's why they're asking for help from surrounding counties, surrounding states here, people flying in from across the country trying to help. One person who wasn't on the ground, though, was the mayor of LA, Karen Bass. She received a lot of criticism for this. Jill, she happened to be at an inauguration for a leader in Ghana. So she was in Africa when this started. She made her way back. She made her way back on Wednesday, but not before she faced a lot of criticism for not being on the ground there, despite the fire threat, not cutting her trip back sooner. Among the critics, the billionaire owner of the LA Times, Patrick Soon-Shiong, slamming the mayor there. Also, what's come to light is that the LA Fire Department has an $800 million plus budget, but that was cut by about $17 million in the most recent budget. In the mayor's proposal, she actually proposed slightly more than that. They cut $17 million. So it's a 2% cut. It's not clear that the 2%, the $17 million, really would have made a difference, but ultimately bad optics at a time where entire neighborhoods are going up in flames here. President Biden, happens to be in LA right now. He was at a press conference with Governor Newsom, promising him whatever support they needed. Meanwhile, President-elect Trump was also chiming in. He's not on the ground in California, but just days now from being sworn in, he was on social media blaming Governor Gavin Newsom. He calls him New Scum and his LA crew for the calamity. The governor responding saying, this is not the time to be blaming anyone. This is a time for support as people are losing their homes. Nonetheless, Trump said it was the Democratic governor of California and his water policies that would have allowed more rain and snow melt to flow to the south here that would have prevented this. It's not clear that that would have actually prevented anything since the reservoirs are at full capacity. That's a slightly separate issue here, according to experts on the ground there. Nonetheless, this has been a huge issue going back to the first term of Trump, taking issue with California fire mitigation policies here. And there's concern from Newsom and others that once President Trump takes the oath of office, he might limit aid to the state. Again, no water shortage after 2 years of record rains. We talked about those atmospheric rivers. The reservoirs across the state are all at or above levels normally expected for this time of year. The problem, again, is just the immediate demands for firefighting water, broken and damaged pipes, homeowners leaving hoses and sprinklers on, all of that, they can't resupply. So again, it's an infrastructure issue. Nonetheless, expect this to be a political football here in the coming weeks and months as the Trump administration takes over here. Jill, right now we're not at the end, at the beginning of the end, even in the middle here. This appears to be the beginning as we continue to record this and hear about new fires.
Moshe, one thing that we were talking about a little bit before we started to record this podcast is that while every single natural disaster and so many of these stories that we cover in the news are absolutely horrific, what makes this fire a little bit different from others that we covered is just that it's affecting such a populated area. And as we said, there are reporters who are literally covering their own houses that are being destroyed. I think there's not too many people out there who don't know people who have been impacted by this. I just was texting with a friend of mine who said his in-laws and their whole family, all of their homes have been destroyed. And I said, well, is everybody at least okay? And he said, yeah, they are, but this is going to destroy them. Like just the recovery of it. They to have no home, to have no belongings, to have nowhere to stay. And as you said in the beginning of the podcast, we're not even talking a year of recovery here. This could be decades.
Jill, we're talking about a completely different type of destruction, but like a Katrina-like destruction, right? Where communities will never quite be the same after this, as they attempt here to rebuild entire neighborhoods from scratch, and just really devastating as we hear more and more here. And right now the winds have died down a bit, but then they're going to light up again and get really gusty again later today. And things are so dry. The conditions are so dry right now in California that one of those embers can light up an additional fire as we're recording this.
All right, time for the speed read from Fox News. Attorney General Merrick Garland plans to release special counsel Jack Smith's report on the 2020 election interference case against President-elect Trump if a federal court clears the way. The Department of Justice told a U.S. appellate court on Wednesday that should an injunction be lifted, Garland intends to release Volume 1 of Smith's final report to Congress and the public. It covers the allegations that Trump attempted to illegally undo the results of the 2020 presidential election. However, the Attorney General will not release Volume 2. That covers the classified documents case against Trump. And that's because two defendants in that case still face criminal proceedings. Only the chairman and the ranking members of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees will be permitted to view Volume 2, and they'll be prohibited from talking about that report publicly. They say that that will safeguard defendant interests. And we know nothing ever leaks. So good there. We're safe.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there, but certainly that could endanger the federal prosecutions of the two Trump allies there in the classified records case. And that's the reason they're not releasing the report, is because that could interfere in that case. And the Justice Department doesn't want to interfere with its own case. Now, a reminder here, the two federal cases against Trump are gone because, well, bottom line is he's president and he's going to run the Justice Department. And there was enough delaying in terms of legal maneuvers there by his team that the thing never went to trial. Now, ultimately, the classified records case also was dismissed by a district court judge, but that hasn't gone through the full appeals process because, again, they ran out of time. And then, of course, there was the Supreme Court case in regards to what is an official act versus unofficial act by the president when it comes to January 6th. So Jack Smith dealt with a lot of issues there in terms of trying to get his prosecutions done before the election. Trump's been elected. They are done, but he still would like to release the reports to give a sense to the public of what he discovered. And so now you see the Attorney General, the Biden Attorney General, at least for the last 2 weeks here, looking to release it. So he's looking to release at least that report regarding January 6th. The classified records one will stay private, we think, if it doesn't leak. And so we'll continue to monitor the maneuvering. So we'll continue to monitor all of this. Trump's attorneys fighting hard not to get to these reports released. Sort of like, in a similar situation, the whole Matt Gaetz Ethics Committee report. That was to remain private and that was eventually released. Now, that was a congressional thing. This is a legal thing with a special counsel. This has other implications. It involves the incoming president. So a lot of interesting decisions here in the final days of the Biden administration before Trump takes over.
Overseas now from CNN, just weeks after a coalition of rebels toppled the Assad regime, the interim government in Syria has moved quickly to change the country's school curriculum, covering subjects from English and history to science and Islamic studies. They've removed references to figures in pre-Islamic times and incorporated more religion and extremist interpretations of the Quran into the system. Critics say the changes are worrying signs of how the new Syrian government plans to govern a diverse country, which is majority Muslim, but does have a cross-section of minorities, including Christians. Some of the changes were welcome, like removing the glorification of the Assad regime and family from textbooks. But some Syrians are questioning why other changes were a priority given the more pressing issues like insecurity, sectarian tensions, and economic crisis that still confront the country.
It's remarkable given all the challenges Syria has and the fact that these rebels don't even have control over nearly a third of the country, along with a lot of other instability. After a 12-year civil war, they're already getting to school curriculum decisions, but it does give you a sense of their background here. Remember, the group here, HTS, is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. They have promised, literally it's in the name of the group, an Islamist government over Syria. Now, Syria is a diverse country, mainly a Muslim country, but you have a large Shiite sect. Those were the Alawites, actually, that the Assad regime came from. You also have Christians who live there, as well as other minority groups, ethnicities like the Kurds, etc. And so there's a concern among those minority groups that HTS will impose some sort of Islamist education on everybody, regardless of their background. So everyone is monitoring that. HTS certainly under scrutiny because they're trying to push themselves as a more moderate, softer version of the Al-Qaeda offshoot they started as just a few years ago. So it's something we'll watch here. Jill, incorporation of religion, historical revisionism, nothing new in Syria, and frankly, nothing new around the world. We certainly see it here. We've been reporting recently on the attempts in Texas and Oklahoma to incorporate the Ten Commandments in the Bible into public school education. So it's a debate happening everywhere. Syria, its own unique situation, given the Islamist regime that is set to take over. Now, they say they're going to have elections in 4 years. 4 years from now, they say it's going to take that long. We'll see if those happen, and we'll see how HTS goes from Al-Qaeda offshoot to governing, to the government of a very large country that is rebuilding after years of war.
Yeah, you and I were debating offline this story and whether it was worth covering. And one of the things we talked about was that there is a lot of uncertainty and questions about HTS. And as we saw in Afghanistan, you had the Taliban that was promising, hey, we're the kinder and gentler Taliban 2.0. Fast forward a couple of years since the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, women banned from professions. There was just a report that windows where women can be seen are actually being banned in Afghanistan. So not much has changed. Old Taliban, same as the new Taliban.
Yeah, there's very extremist interpretations of the Quran, the most extreme versions of it being over there in Afghanistan. The question is, what version of it will HTS bring to Syria now that they're in charge?
So some business news here from Bloomberg. Spark Group, which operates fashion brands like Lucky, Eddie Bauer, Aeropostale, and Forever 21, and Brooks Brothers, has merged with JCPenney to form a new company. It's called Catalyst Brands. The joint venture was formed between JCPenney and Spark Group and its shareholders, Simon Property Group, Brookfield Corp, Authentic Brands Group, and Shell Group. So basically, you've got the mall operators and the mall stores merging together here.
Jill, it sounds like basically half the places I purchased my clothing between 1996 and 2010.
The 90s called Moshe. They want its wardrobe back.
They want Eddie Bauer and Aeropostale back. Maybe that's the last time I went to Aeropostale. And then Brooks Brothers was sort of the first place I went to back 20 years ago when we had to wear suits. I was in D.C. Covering Capitol Hill, so it was much more formal attire, still pretty formal down there, but sort of less so in the post-COVID era. A reminder here, a number of these brands, including JCPenney, have dealt with bankruptcy in recent years. So the group here hoping to combine all of these and with scale, find a way to be profitable with these various brands and find ways to appeal to the Gen Zers like they did to us back in the day. Now, I think we reported recently, Jill, at the end of 2024, the mall is back. Gen Z likes the mall.
Moshe, they like the mall, but it's like the experiences that are bringing them to the mall. So there's ice skating, there's gyms. It's a little bit different than the mall of our youth. But one of the things that young people say is that they want to actually buy something and get it and bring it home and touch it and have it. They don't want to just like order it on their phone and wait a couple days for it.
Yeah, you gotta, if you're going to buy the Forever 21 clothes, you got to go check them out in person. Eddie Bauer. I think I used to have the Eddie Bauer cologne back in high school when I was trying to, impress the ladies back sophomore year.
It seems like something you might have.
You like Issei Miyake, and then I went to like Issei Miyake or Acqua di Gio. Anyway, message me with your favorite scent of the 1990s.
I always did the CK1. Do you remember that one that was for guys and girls?
Yes. CK1, Dakar Noir.
Dakar Noir, yes.
It's all coming back to me now.
And the power of scent is so strong. So I feel like if we were to smell one of those old scents, we would be taken right back to our high school years.
Immediately. I'm like back to homecoming 1997.
All right. More of our walk down memory lane, maybe on the Instagram account.
On the Instagram, a different podcast. We should get back to the headlines for the people.
Okay. From the Associated Press, a major citrus grower said this week that it was abandoning its orange growing operations, reflecting the headwinds that Florida's signature crops are facing following a series of hurricanes and tree diseases. Alico announced Monday that it planned to wind down its citrus operations after the current crop is harvested later this year. The company, based in Fort Myers, owns about 53,000 acres across 8 counties in Florida. About a quarter of its land will now be slotted for potentially developing commercial or residential projects in the near and long-term future. Just what everybody needs, Moshe, another strip mall. The company said its citrus production had declined by 73% over the past decade. The impact of hurricanes Irma in 2017, Ian in 2022, and Milton in 2024 on trees that were already weakened from years of citrus greening disease has led Alico to conclude that growing citrus is no longer economically viable in Florida.
Yeah, and you sort of, think about Florida as the home of oranges. We should note about 2/3 of oranges are grown domestically in California, and then Florida citrus production has been down for decades, as you mentioned. It now accounts for about 1/3 of production, but that keeps dropping. In fact, production this year will drop 1/3 alone in Florida over last year. Again, all these various diseases impacting plants there. A variety of reasons behind that, including climate change, and then you have the hurricanes that have come through, and it's not worth it to grow what isn't viewed as sort of the iconic thing in Florida, the oranges, anymore. And so just a sign of the times, and we thought we'd bring you that story.
From the BBC, Apple has said it will update an artificial intelligence feature that has issued inaccurate news alerts on its latest iPhones. This includes the false news that Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing a U.S. insurance chief, had shot himself. Also, that tennis star Rafael Nadal had come out as gay. Again, not true. The tech company said it was developing a software update that would further clarify when news notifications were actually summaries generated by the company's Apple Intelligence system. It said the update would be rolled out in the coming weeks. And it follows a formal complaint by the BBC in December when news alerts branded with the corporation's logo told some iPhone users that Mangione had shot himself. Mangione, again, alive and being held at a prison in Brooklyn. False news alerts were issued again on Friday of last week when Apple's AI system summarized the BBC app notifications to wrongly say that Nadal had come out as gay. It's a little confusing, Moshe, because I don't even know what are those based on.
Apparently, in the Nadal case, AI misinterpreted a Brazilian tennis player, totally different name, not even close to Rafael Nadal, who is gay, and somehow AI kind of merged the various headlines out there, and AI decided to out Rafael Nadal, and so.
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
In Seinfeld.
But what's wrong is that at a time where we don't already have issues with trust in the news, AI not ready for prime time when it comes to news here, and sort of just like taking in all the various information, mixing it together. Jill, I've talked about this on the podcast before. I've been trying to use AI in some very basic ways, like, hey, AI, for on this day in history, like, give me 5 interesting things that happened on this day. And still, it messes up a couple of them where I'm like, that didn't actually happen on January 9th. And AI is like, oh, sorry about that. We'll get that right next time. I'm like, AI, stop it. This is a fair warning, by the way, for folks. AI, now Google's incorporating AI into the top of search results. You might have noticed this recently. If you search something on Google, before you get to results, they do an AI summary at the top. Be very careful about that summary. Several times I have noticed that it's not accurate. So do not take that as the gold standard. It is not the gold standard. It's not the silver standard. It's not even the bronze standard when it comes to truth and information there. So the BBC was like, yo, Apple, what's up with the summaries of our articles? You're not even literally rewrote the article. You can't even summarize it accurately. You're adding random things in there. An AI summary from Apple, also recently from the New York Times story, decided based on the arrest warrant that was issued by the International Criminal Court for Benjamin Netanyahu that Netanyahu had been arrested. And so, again, AI sort of reading, trying to summarize, getting things wrong there. But this can create huge issues. As we know, news impacts things. It can lead to a riot. It can lead to a lot of issues. So be very careful right now when it comes to AI news summaries. They're not there yet. Apple says the feature is in beta. They're making improvements with the help of user feedback. A software update is coming. We encourage users to report a concern if they view an unexpected notification summary. So be very careful. Here at Mo News, we're not using AI for any summaries or anything. I'm trying to. It would be nice, but AI is still not there yet when it comes to interpreting news information at a point where you can guarantee it with 100% accuracy.
And by the way, using AI to ask for a few things that happened on this day in history, that's like the low-hanging fruit of AI. That's as easy as it gets. That's like, I don't know how many puns I can use here, but that is like a slam dunk for AI. That's exactly what it should be used for.
But you have to train AI, right? You got to train it to which websites you go to. And like you can't train AI. You can't train AI for every single possible scenario. And there's like millions, billions of websites out there, right? So you have to like, AI, don't use this website, use this website. And there's so many fake stories out there. If you search for things, there's so many fake AI sites that just like make up numbers all the time. I think AOC, the congresswoman, was joking because if you search like AOC net worth, there's like a random website that says she's worth several $100 million. And she's like, I wish I am not. But it comes up as a search result on the first page there of Google. So, Google's constantly refining itself. AI needs to be trained. So just be very careful with these AI summaries. And it looks like back to the drawing board for the folks at Apple.
Okay, finally from CNET, the 2025 Consumer Electronics Show known as CES is in full swing. And there are a number of innovative, weird, and wonderful new products. So CNET.com looked at the coolest and sometimes creepiest tech across AI, the smart home, TV, cars, laptops, health, and more. And don't forget about all the robots. Here is some of what they found. And I want to mention, without the photos, some are kind of hard to grasp. So I did include a link to all of the photos in the show notes for this podcast. To start, let's begin with a roll-up projector screen, which is not super expensive. So it isn't the LG OLED rollable screen of your dreams, according to CNET, but the Ascend may be more within your grasp. It is retractable, ambient light rejecting screen with built-in speakers and an ultra short throw projector that kind of looks like a piece of furniture when the screen withdraws. So Moshe, that's expected to cost about $2,700. Not cheap, but as they said, cheap-ish.
Cheap-ish by the standards of like a rollable TV screen.
Yes. Next up, a super small home. So if you're ready to go small or if you don't have the budget to go big, a tiny home can be an appealing alternative, especially when it's luxurious and packed with the latest smart tech. CNET's favorite of AC Futures designer Mini Residences is the AI Thu. Which is, I think, how you pronounce it. It's a modular build as small as 400 square feet, but it is packed with smart technology that helps control lighting, heating, cooling, and appliances. There are solar panels, a water recycling system, an atmospheric water generation, and a lot more. Expected to cost about $100,000.
Jill, it looks like a super techish, snazzy RV when you see the some of the designs that they have here.
I mean, it's definitely a lot nicer than my studio apartment that I lived in Manhattan. I'll tell you that.
Well, honestly, for 400 square feet in Manhattan, you're probably paying a lot more these days than, this little tiny home on the go. I just don't know that you'd have room to park it in New York City. You definitely need some space out there.
Okay, speaking of parking, cars. They showed off a futuristic looking electric vehicle that recharges as you drive. So top of mind for every potential EV buyer is how inconvenient charging is. But the Aptera Solar EV is wrapped in solar panels to recharge while you drive. They expect to start producing the vehicle later this year for a cost of about $40,000. And Moshe, this is one I suggest you look at the picture because this does not really look like the typical EV that you would expect. It kind of looks like it actually has 3 wheels.
So yeah, there's one wheel in the back and 2 in the front, sort of a tricycle, like a reverse tricycle thing. Kind of looks like a fish. Definitely looking at it, Jill, it doesn't look like you can really, you definitely, if you're taking it to the airport, you can only put carry-on in the back.
It's a 2-seater.
It's tight in there, yes.
It's a 2-seater.
It's like a smart car. It looks like a new version of the smart car, if you've seen that.
Next up, the Dream X50 Ultra. It is a robot vacuum, but it has tiny legs that can get up ledges or cross door gaps. So you've got Roombas and other robot vacuums that have been a big hit, but their little wheels could be defeated by the tiniest ledge or threshold between rooms. Enter Dream's X50 Ultra. It has 2 short-wheeled legs that it could deploy to surmount very modest obstacles. So it's not going to climb stairs, but CNET says they did see it get up small ledges a couple of inches high. It isn't cheap. It costs about $1,700 when it starts shipping in mid-February. But if you pre-order it, you could get about $400 off. And who knows, eventually it will probably get less expensive.
Jill, $1,700 for a vacuum, that's a pretty penny. So it better really clean up. I'd like to see this thing out there. But I guess what's nice about it, and I know people who swear by the kind of automated vacuums. We don't have one, though. My wife's grandmother, Elaine, who listens to this podcast, swore by it. She wanted to get it to us. She wanted to get one for us as a wedding gift. Not this one in particular, like sort of one of the Roomba type things. But I don't know. I still like to, I don't know that I trust the robots to really clean up in that way. But maybe the $1,700 robot's the way to go.
I don't mind vacuuming. So like this solves a problem that I don't totally have. I'm not a huge, I don't find the process of vacuuming to be so burdensome, but I guess that if you're older, perhaps it is really helpful. Moshe, this next one I feel like is tailor-made for you.
Oh, you left me Delta Airlines' new Delta Concierge here that they're rolling out at CES. It's like they describe it an AI trip butler. It's a new feature of the Delta app, but they're trying to take out some of the more annoying parts of travel, like reminding you about passport renewal, visa requirements, suggesting what to pack for your destination's weather. And so they're going to have these AI-powered features that will help you with all of that. You'll be able to ask questions through text or through speech and have the app respond to you about things like, hey, I'm flying to, Seattle tomorrow. What's the weather going to be like the next couple days? Based on the AI story earlier, let's hope that Delta AI Concierge, has their act together and they're not just making up things about the weather here. Hopefully they've tested it out, but I'll certainly give this a ride my next trip.
What would be helpful is information about who you're sitting next to.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think that would be helpful.
But there's privacy issues there, right? Like they can't just say, like sitting in 13B will be, Jill Wagner, who like recently
with her young kids,
with her young kids,
gonna stop screaming.
Who typically travels with the young kids, and recently searched on our AI platform, 101 fever and cough.
Is it safe to travel with the flu?
Yes. All right. So we'll see how that goes. Next up at CES, the Lenovo ThinkBook Plus Gen 6 Rollable. Basically, it's a laptop that they call dual screen and effectively has a button. So you open the laptop like a normal laptop, and then it basically looks like works like a window, a car window that moves up. So basically, the screen doubles in height from the normal height, and basically the screen extends. You have this much larger, taller screen here. We'll see how that does for the folks at Lenovo or people who like that, the larger screen, this big square form. But that's something. Speaking of screens, final item here, a 55-inch TV that can suction cup mount anywhere. So renters, you don't have to mount the TV if you're wary into drilling into your walls. Ultimately, this is called the displaced TV that uses suction cups to stick to the wall, runs off batteries, meaning you can stick it basically on any wall anywhere and move it about. The displaced TV comes in a variety of sizes. It starts at $1,500 for a 27-inch model. Jill, I would be super nervous about the suction cup TV for $1,500 or more, suctioning my TV to the wall. You know how suctions work. Like sometimes they fall off, but hopefully these suctions are, will hold.
I'm guessing the TV is super light and the suctions are super strong. That would be my hope.
You would hope. All right, now time for On This Day in History. On this day in 1493, Christopher Columbus, you might have heard of him, was sailing what is now near the Dominican Republic when he reports seeing 3 mermaids in his journal. In reality, they were manatees, but he called them mermaids. He wrote in his journal, they're not half as beautiful as they were painted. So he's like, I saw mermaids in real life. They're not as pretty as the artist renderings. It turns out mermaids still fake, but he saw manatees. On this day in 1973, Mick Jagger was refused a visa into Japan because of a drug bust several years previous. It actually halted the Rolling Stones' plans to perform in Japan. Notable little musical history item on this day. And then two big Apple on this days in history, sort of Apple-themed podcast here. On this day in 2001, 24 years ago, Apple introduced iTunes for the first time with the debut of the iPod, which revolutionized digital music. So that could fulfill the earlier clue of the biggest innovation of the 21st century. I don't know that I would think it's that. I think 6 years later, on this day in history, Apple CEO Steve Jobs introduces the iPhone, which I think you could make an argument for the iPhone being one of the most game-changing digital innovations of the 21st century.
Music player, clock, flashlight,
calendar,
you name it, calendar,
email device.
Yes.
Now,
and
FaceTime.
a phone. And a phone.
Yeah. Oh, and also a phone thrown in there. But Jill, the App Store and the existence of that has created hundreds of billions, probably trillions of dollars in companies here. I mean, companies like Uber and Waze, and how Google is innovated, and all the various apps you now take for granted, all come about with the kind of innovation there of the iPhone, the App Store, a remarkable, all of those various things that again. In human history, this stuff hasn't been around very long. We sort of take it for granted now. But especially as we enter the 5G era and then eventually 6G here, just what's possible with that device and sort of the app infrastructure and companies that develop the ecosystem that develops around it, pretty significant. Hey, I mean, even Mo News, Instagram, being able to do that in a mobile way. We can draw that line back to on this day in history, 18 years ago. All right, we end here with a bit of music history. On this day, Dave Matthews turns 58 years old, born in South Africa on this day. Eventually settles in Charlottesville, Virginia, where he forms the Dave Matthews Band. On this day, 44 years ago, Phil Collins releases In the Air Tonight, one of those iconic songs.
Moshe, there was an urban legend about that song, that it's about Collins witnessing someone drown and that he and nobody else saved that person. But Collins has repeatedly denied that, saying that nobody knows what the song is about and that he kind of likes the mystery.
Of course, one of the most iconic drum solos there. And some people like to, if you time it to New Year's Eve at a certain time, you can hit the drum solo at midnight. I guess that's something people do. And finally, on this day, iconic song from early American Idol days, Daniel Powter's You Had a Bad Day, out today, 20 years ago on this day in 2005.
All right. Well, we hope everyone has a good day.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Review us in the App Store. If you are in the Los Angeles area, please stay safe. We are thinking about you.
Yes, and please share anything you're learning, photos, videos, etc. We will stay on top of the story.